Have you ever felt you don't know, have forgotten who you really are? That you've spent years just adapting to surroundings to make life easier and don't know what's the real you anymore? If so, how did you overcome this? I always see it as outgrowing my former self. It's time to improve, find purpose, and move into the next chapter. This often happens once I finish a major step in life, like graduating college, getting my first job, buying and improving my house to my satisfaction, etc. Once I put life on potential autopilot to all the things I thought I need something else to be a mission, journey. Edit, loving the responses. Can't respond to everything, but if you need to reach out, send me a message, not chat. Can't guarantee I can solve your problems, but I can hopefully leave you with some motivation and positive outlook. Might not be the answer you're looking for. It seems that when I'm alone with my thoughts at night, I can't help but come back to who I am, no matter what facade I put on during the day. This keeps me from forgetting for weeks at a time, let alone years, and I think it is actually a healthy habit so that I don't lose touch with myself. I immigrated to the States from Europe and got lost. Now my memories of my life in Germany are fading, but I remember being so much happier with my job and hobbies and friends and only crying once or twice a year when something really sad happened, while now I cry once a week. I am thinking about going back. Best advice I have is this: when we experience things, we make maps of what happened. We all have maps of our time in school, how people treat us, all of our experiences. We also make maps about other people, we make assumptions about others based on what we see or hear. We get maps from others about us too, especially friends and parents. What they tell us we are, what we think they see when they look at us, what we think they think about us, etc., etc., etc. People tend to focus on maps, and label themselves, pigeonhole themselves into roles and what they think they should do, feel, or be based on the maps that they have. You are not a map. You are a 3D terrain of whatever beautiful biome you want to be. Don't stare at a map all day and forget to look up at what it really is. Edit, holy cow, tie for metals. New to Reddit, first I've gotten any also edit, fixed the ETCS, tie all for pointing that typo out. Live alone. It forces you to decide what you like to eat, how you want to eat, how you spend your downtime. It forces you to define who you are. Sometimes that's a fast food eating couch potato, but eventually that gets boring. Then is when you begin experimenting with other things. Cooking, going out, asking yourself, what do I want to do? When you learn who you are, you become confident. There's probably no real you that exists across time. That's just a thing you built up when you were younger to give yourself a stable identity and core values. The you now is just as real as the you then. We all adapt to our surroundings and change to make our lives easier. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you're unhappy with your life now, you can adapt by changing. You need to believe that, and you probably know it since it seems to be something you're afraid of. But this is the real you now, and you need to focus on the needs of that person, not some idealized phantom from the past. I majored in film in college, and it wasn't until my senior year that I realized I hated the work culture of the industry and didn't want to do it. Film had been my whole life since I was like 13, and I had kind of an existential crisis. I ended up finishing the degree I didn't want because I was so close. I ended up moving 1,000 miles away after graduation. I have a job I love, which gives amazing benefits, and they will even completely pay for me to go back to school if I want, so I might try that soon. I literally just started to notice progress in my life 3 weeks ago, so time will tell if this is a true solution or a temporary one, but I just started to try to care about things. I kept going to church, volunteering, trying to find new hobbies, considering people to date, etc. Eventually I began to realize which kinda of things and people I cared about. Within my friend group I started gradually lowering my filter and saying more of what I thought, gauging reactions, and then instead of changing my filter, I shifted who I would spend more time with. It really sounds trivial, and it is, but all you can really do is try to be yourself even if you don't know who that is. If you're like me and don't know, decide who you want to be and start working towards being that person. Also, give that ideal some wiggle room to change as you make progress. I did realize it, and it's just life changes you. As you get older, experience new things, get new stresses or responsibility, you kind of lose who you were and become someone new. Certain aspects change but some things don't. The only part that is a bit I guess unsettling or empty is things that brought you so much joy you just find you don't care about anymore. It's harrowing, yes, but I just look forward to learning new things and seeing who I become. Example, I took up fishing. I have crippling OCD and the mere concept of it was off-putting to me, but now I love it. Took me over 30 years to try it and now it's just part of who I am now. I had this feeling for all my life after puberty. There were these high ideals that I always maintained and couldn't live up to them. Mostly because they were about saving the world and unattainable things like that. I spent an absurd amount of my teenage years studying philosophy and religion rather than dealing with teenage social issues like my peers. Ever since I was a kid, I had this goofy side though. When I wasn't pulling my hair out reading about semiotics, I would write silly stories to make people laugh. When I went to college, things changed. I began exhibiting some really dangerous behavior patterns, especially for someone with a huge conscience like myself. The line between my public and private life got larger. I began feeling I could no wrong. I don't really want to list some of the things I did here because of shame. But suffice it to say, you would have all hated college me. I'm going to skip to the end and just say this all got worse until I woke up one day and all my lightheartedness was gone. I was working a high-paying meaningless job. I'd cheated on everyone I dated and thrown away every romantic relationship, some very painfully. My life had become all about money, sex, and status. The biggest epiphany of my life was realizing two things. One, everyone goes through some form of this. We all try on different faces. If we find one that doesn't fit, we still tend to cling to it so that we don't have to change our current comfort level. This phase is normal and human. 2, I was bipolar. Manic. My post-puberty life was punctuated by periods of unbelievable energy and increasingly risky behavior. It put me on top. There were years where I had fans. I got up on stage and gave speeches and made people laugh and was the center of attention. And later it landed me in jail because the center cannot hold. But with that diagnosis I finally was able to figure out my history and why I could never live up to those ideals. Because grandiosity is a textbook manic symptom too. These days I don't push myself to do any more than love my family and enjoy the little things. I've lived more than most people do in a lifetime. I deserve a rest, at least for a little while. Sorry this is so long. The answer is that the normal cycle is to lose yourself for a little while and then find yourself again. Everyone has an existential crisis to some degree. You have to trust that this is normal and your real self is always there waiting for your return. How you return, that will be unique. A death in the family, jail, overdose, failed relationship, financial loss, you name it. Something has to touch you deeply and it will happen. In the natural course of things we all take a big hit sooner or later. I don't like to generalize but the 20s are a time when people tend to drift away from themselves. After that it's really anyone's guess when you'll come back. But since you're asking this question, I say it will be sooner than later for you. I've actually felt like my younger self didn't know who I was. I was shy AF, still am at bars and in terms of dating, but never one to try and be outgoing with friends or start conversations or anything. Now I've danced in front of hundreds of people and announced on a microphone. I check dozens of people in at a hotel a day so I'm always talking to someone new and do my best to make everyone smile. Just start caring about making yourself laugh instead of making others think you're cool or whatever. Don't be afraid to let out your inner dread wolf, my friend. When one is so lost, so down the rabbit hole, surrounded by a fluid and dangerous environment, things stripped away and reconstructed in response to others, how can one tell what is real at all, let alone what is really you? Sometimes, with the slipstream whipping away artifice and tears, I get a glimpse. More I see how autistic I am, and how effectively adapted. How my mother contoured my life. How I have been loved, and how I have loved. But what is me? I seem to be a space where all this shows up, and I pretend, as does everyone, that some magic I is actually in control. I just tell myself, you know literally everyone else? Yeah, fluff them. Quote. I moved every couple years as a kid. It was always hard to remember who I really was since it felt like there were a bunch of different versions of me depending on where I was living. It was like I wasn't really just one person, but just a bunch of different versions of me. It's something I still struggle with, but spending more time alone has helped a lot. Also, I don't see myself moving again anytime soon since I'm in college, so I'm taking advantage of this time to really figure out my character. I didn't even realize how little I knew who I was until a friend asked about what my life was like before college, and I couldn't come up with just one answer. Instead of being my full self wherever I went, I adapted to the culture I was immersed in, and then got ready to change again once we moved to the next place. It was hard as a kid, but I was always pretty happy no matter where I was, and now I have time to settle down a little bit.